So, what happens when one of the world's biggest football clubs gets treated like a personal piggy bank? Today, we are diving deep into the really controversial ownership of Manchester United. We're going to look at it through the eyes of one fan who calls the whole thing a heist and makes the case that the club isn't just a business, it's a national treasure that desperately needs saving.
I mean, just imagine describing the last 20 years of your favorite team's history with that one word, a heist. That's the powerful, and let's be honest, pretty shocking word our source uses here. In their view, this isn't some business deal that just went a little bit sour. It's a deliberate theft. That single word really sets the stage for everything we're about to unpack. So, where do you even begin with a story like this? Well, it all starts with a single voice, a fan's passionate plea to protect something they see as way more than just a company. Look, this isn't about losing a few matches, this is a desperate call to save a piece of history. The author is basically arguing that Manchester United is a cultural landmark, like a famous museum or an old castle, and right now it's in danger of crumbling. This heartfelt appeal is really the foundation for the entire argument we're about to explore. Okay, to really understand how we got here, we need to jump in the time machine and go all the way back to 2005. Back to a hugely controversial deal that would change the destiny of Manchester United forever. And this wasn't happening in a vacuum, right? It was part of this bigger trend in English football, where these historic clubs were being seen as financial assets, just ripe for the picking. So how did this even happen? Well, it all boils down to this clever and, pretty controversial financial trick called a leveraged buyout. Here's how it works. Imagine you want to buy a house, but instead of using your own money, you get a massive loan. And what do you use as collateral to guarantee that loan? The house itself. It's a high-stakes game. And in this case, Manchester United was the prize.
And just look at the result. On the left, you've got a financially healthy, totally debt-free club. On the right, a club suddenly drowning in over £500 million of debt. And the craziest part? That debt was the money used to buy the club. It's like the club was forced to buy itself and then got stuck with the bill. A complete financial reversal, literally overnight.
And the fans, they knew exactly what was going on. They protested, they made a ton of noise, but they were ignored. Some were so disgusted, they literally started their own club from scratch. Now here's the real kicker. The Premier League has since banned these kinds of takeovers. So the question just hangs in the air. If it's not okay now, why on earth was it okay back then? All right, so what has been the real cost of this ownership over the last 2 decades? The numbers, honestly, are just staggering. £1 billion. Just let that sink in for a second. That's not money spent on world-class players or fixing the stadium roof. No, that is £1 billion that has been drained from the club just to pay the interest on the loan that was used to buy it in the first place. It's like a financial black hole. And it doesn't stop there. On top of that £1 billion interest bill, the owners have also paid themselves over £160 million in dividends. So while the club is saddled with all this debt, cash is still just flowing out to the owners. So you add it all up, the interest, the dividends, the fees, the debt itself, and you get a number that is just hard to comprehend. Over £2 billion. That's the total price Manchester United has paid, not for success on the field, but for the privilege of being owned. This chart here really just lays it all out, crystal clear. On one side, you have this massive amount of money that's been taken out of the club, well over £1 billion. And on the other side, representing direct investment from the owner's own pockets, you have a big, fat zero. This is the central dynamic that the author describes as just plain exploitative. Okay, so just when you think this whole story can't get any more complicated, a new player enters the game. The billionaire Jim Ratcliffe and his company, Ineos. He's a local guy, a lifelong fan, so surely he's the hero the club's been waiting for, right? Well, according to our source, it is definitely not that simple. So what does this new era actually look like? According to the author, it's pretty much the worst of both worlds. On one hand, you've got the neglectful, absentee owners, and now you've got a ruthless cost cutter. That local boy done good charm has faded really fast, replaced by a much harsher reality of staff layoffs and cuts to the club's own charitable foundation. It's a new chapter for sure, but maybe not the one fans were hoping for. And we have to remember, this isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. We're talking about people's lives. Since the new partner came on board, around 450 employees have been made redundant. That's nearly half the workforce facing unemployment. A really brutal start to this new chapter, with a very real human cost. So with all this financial mess and the real-world human cost, what's the solution? What's the way out? Well, the author proposes something radical, something that could actually change the face of English football forever.
The whole idea comes from a law that already exists to protect historic buildings. In the UK, you can't just go and tear down a castle or a famous old cathedral. They're called listed buildings, which means they're so important to the country's history that they are legally protected. They're considered national treasures. And here it is. This is the core question of the entire argument. The author is asking, if we go to these incredible lengths to protect our most important buildings from reckless developers, shouldn't we offer similar protections to our most important cultural institutions, like our major football clubs, from reckless ownership? It's a really powerful and provocative question. So, what would this actually look like in practice? The author's call to action is crystal clear. First, create a new law to protect clubs just like we do for historic buildings. Second, make these kinds of predatory takeovers illegal, not just against football's rules, but against the law of the land. And if you think the government would never get involved, just look at what happened with Chelsea. It can be done, and the author argues it's time for the Department of Culture, Media, and Sport to step up. And so, we're left with this one big question that goes far, far beyond just one club. What do you think a football club really is? Is it just another asset for billionaires to buy and sell? Or is it something more, a piece of our shared history, a part of our communities, something that deserves to be protected for generations to come? What do you think?